And if you're going to take cookies from the back, please use the napkin to reach in and take the cookies. Thank you. Or I will spray you with these.
Is on? Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to get started. I think pretty much everyone knows me, except for our film crew here. Michael Cantwell, president of the Democratic Club of Delray Beach, and we've got a kind of varied program tonight. First off, we have Dr. Karina Balderramos Robinson speaking on the census with a colleague of hers, Kathy? Yeah. First, as club business, the March meeting is supposed to be when we have our elections. I think there's maybe 5 people here who are not already on the board. So that will probably be very fast. Rob Resnick is going to do it. And in fact, why don't you do it right now?
Thank you for making it easy to count tonight. I can appreciate that much anyway. So for anybody that was here in January, you may remember that we announced a slate, and at that time we had an open call for nominations. There were no other nominations than to maintain the current list of board members. As you know, Michael Cantwell as our president, Bob Avrak and Mary Fader as our vice presidents, David Kulik as the treasurer, and Sandy, Mike's wife, as our secretary. So that is technically the slate of the officers that we have. There are other board members. The president gets to appoint some additional people. But as far as what we're voting on tonight, those are the open positions that we need to ratify. Before we take a vote, there is the opportunity for anybody in the room, members of the club obviously, that wants to raise their hand and be considered for any of those positions. We don't have to only vote for the slate. So if there's anybody here that wants to be I guess to self-nominate or nominate someone sitting next to you, we can do that. I'll entertain those at this time. And seeing none, then what I will do is propose or make a motion to the floor that we approve the slate of current officers to continue in their positions. All in favor, raise your hand.
Yeah.
Any opposed, raise your hand. That was real easy. It was unanimous. I pass the mic back to our continuing president, Michael Cantwell.
Thank you, Rob. Okay. Now the other interesting thing that we're going to do after Dr. Robinson is done, I was contacted yesterday by Takeshi Yamasaki, who is a producer with the Japanese equivalent of PBS. And he is interested in our thoughts on the primary, which is only a few days away. Many of us may have voted already. And what I told him, I mean, he'll come out afterwards. I'm going to say a little bit about the primaries. I won't hold things up now. I think it's a better as an introduction. I mean, I think it's pretty clear at this point who our nominee is going to be, unless he shoots someone on Fifth Avenue. Because that would stop him. And the other thing, speaking of being stopped, the ancient Greeks in their Greek tragedies had a plot device at the end where the gods came from a machine and resolved all of the loose ends. And the coronavirus is, I think, that device that's going to end our American tragedy. I just don't see any way even an intelligent person in the White House could survive the crash, the coming recession, which is going to be really terrible. I mean, if you've been eating out, or you've seen, or you look at the number of people here, people are nervous, and rightly so. And there's going to be bankruptcies, there's going to be people thrown out of jobs, and that's not a good environment to run for re-election on. So Let me introduce Dr. Robinson, and then afterwards we'll have our interviews, our discussion, and so on. So.
Would you like to let Jim speak first as a candidate?
Absolutely. Jim.
Hello, everybody. I'm sure you all know I am Jim Bonfiglio. I'm the District 89 State Representative in waiting for the November 2020 election. You may recall I came within 32 votes of winning the election in 2018. When we had that election, there were about a 3,200 vote difference plus Republican compared to the Democrats. Thanks to people like you who've gone out and worked the registration, we've reduced that now to 1,700, and we hope to get that down to pretty close to zero by November 2020. So when President Trump wakes up November 4th, he's going to have a Democratic president and vice president. Hopefully one of them will be a woman. He's going to have a Democratic congresswoman representing him, Lois Frankel. He's going to have a Democratic state senator, African-American, Bobby Powell, and you'll have a state representative Democrat, Jim Bonfiglio, representing him. I used to say, I'm going to promise you, my first bill is going to be called a bill to build a wall around Mar-a-Lago and make Trump pay for it. I'm going to change that a little bit in 2020. It's going to be a bill to build a cell in Mar-a-Lago and put Trump in it. All right, so keep up the good work. Keep going out there registering Democrats. We need you to get out and vote and stay healthy and avoid the coronavirus, okay? Good to see you. Thank you so very much. Again, Jim Bonfiglio, State House, District 89. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here today. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, we are the largest chapter in all of Florida, potentially the United States. We are 700 members strong, in which 20% of our members are men. So we're out there every day talking about the issues with regard to our elections, our candidates, our votes, and a lot of different issues. I pledge that tonight I'm going to try my very best to talk to you about the census, the 2020 census. But in the blue folders that you have is my contact information. As the chair of the Speakers Bureau, we have 18 topics that we address throughout the year, all throughout Palm Beach County, and we would love for you to call us. My primary goal for the Speakers Bureau this year has been to go to churches, to YMCAs, to neighborhoods, and really get out the message to underrepresented communities. Because those of us who are fortunate to have a college education or perhaps be in a politically active group are going to vote. We're going to do the census. But I look to each one of you to be an ambassador, that you take 3 or 4 of these packets and you make copies and you drop them off everywhere possible. Literally today, and I'm going to get to the presentation here in a moment, today was the first day that the letter showed up addressed to a resident in people's mailboxes. How many of you all got that letter today? Yay! So we know it's working. It's working.
How many completed it?
Hopefully everybody.
Online.
Okay. I briefly spoke about the League of Women Voters earlier up front. We do have applications here if you'd like to join or ask questions. We are 100 years old this year. Woohoo! And in Palm Beach County, hopefully with the coronavirus being contained, we're gonna have a huge celebration coming up here soon. It was established again 100 years ago, and our primary reason is to educate and advocate. Educate is different. We're out there talking about a nonpartisan message, but we are very political. The League also occasionally will take up an issue and advocate for it, like Amendment 4 last year. But those are two different missions that we have. So this is what we're going to cover tonight. We're going to talk about why the census is so important, the different ways you can respond. I will try to get through most of the slides and then get to the question and answering. However, if you have something you want to press and ask at any point, please just raise your hand. And what you can do as ambassadors. So the census is the count of every living person within the United States and the territories. So we're already have teams out in Alaska, for example, gathering the information, the Samoa, in the different territories. Every citizen is counted. It's required by the U.S. Constitution. Yes, sir.
You said every citizen is counted.
Every resident, every person, every human being, yes. And it's done every 10 years, and that's why it's so important, because we need to get all 330 million people counted this year. Because 10 years from now, those babies who have not yet been born, or the immigrants that become U.S. citizens, it all ties down to money and representation, but we need to do it now. The history of census did not start in America. It started in a lot of other locations around the world. You see there Babylon and Egypt, China and ancient Rome, and it's listed in several places, including the Bible. So imagine in 1790, we only had 4 million people that were counted back then, and now we have 330 million. That's a lot of people to count before the year is over. This is the first year ever where we're reaching out by several mediums to get everyone counted. Back in 1906, it was strictly door to door, just people talking and giving their information. It was a lot lengthier as well. In 1970, they started mailing them out, and people would have to mail them back. This is the first year ever where there are 4 opportunities for you to complete the census. As those letters showed up in the mail today with the code, it gives you the secure website to log on online and complete the question. There was a lady here today, and she said when she logged on, she got it done in 5 minutes. Yay! Right? Want to raise your hand? She is a testimony here tonight. And if people are not technology savvy, perhaps you have seniors or elders, then they can call in using their own phone or a cell phone. And I know sometimes people are hard of hearing, but that's a challenge. So we always ask for family members to help them. They can answer the questions for them as long as they're using that person's code. And at the same time, we have the mail that will go out. Now, can you imagine how much that would cost and how much paper we would waste if people didn't do it by internet or by phone? It's ridiculous. We really need to do it up front as soon as we get that letter. And then if, for whatever reason, people don't complete it by the phone, by the internet, by the mail, then we have already, the U.S. Census Bureau, has already hired on thousands of people to start knocking on doors. And everyone here knows how hot it's going to get come May and June, right? It's just like going out and knocking on doors for Jim. It gets rather hot out there. And I was proud to carry your stuff last year. Oops. I hope I didn't accidentally turn it off. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Florida in the census. The government distributed $1.5 trillion to the government and individuals the last time it was done. And the amount had to do with how many people were counted. The census is a competition between the states. You know, states like California, who has a large population. New Jersey even, it's very, very condensed. But we are competing for that money against other states. And aside from the money and how it trickles down from the federal government all the way down to the local communities, we must pay attention that it can affect our elections. How many seats Florida may get for the U.S. House of Representatives, all the way down to the state level. It may give us another seat or two here in Palm Beach County. And then down to the local levels. You think about your city officials, school board members, commissioners. So why is it important? When that money trickles down, it goes to several places. First and foremost, 50% or so will go towards hospitals and health clinics. Such a dire need there. And then the rest will be apportioned to schools, emergency services such as our firefighters, our police officers, and then bridges, tunnels, and roads. Now we know here in Florida we need to take care of our critical infrastructure. You know, the way that our beaches are somewhat going away, and the care of the lakes and the streams and the rivers, the pollution, we really need that money. So why is it important? Well, when you think about the nonprofit businesses out there or the local community organizations, it's really hard for them to sustain themselves, especially when the budget gets tight. So when you look at the job training centers and the child care centers, you know, back in 2014 when I ran for a U.S. congressional seat in South Dakota, it was the whole state for one district. And it broke my heart because that particular state did not believe in Head Start programs. And there was a lot of teachers that would go across state lines every Sunday night to go teach for a week and make $4 more an hour and then come back home to see their families. So you're so fortunate here in Florida that these representatives care about programs like Head Start and child care centers. So again, another reason to complete the census. So businesses need to care about that data too. You know, the corporations who may or may not get tax write-offs, they pay close attention to the census numbers. Amazon, Office Depot, they may decide to build another factory in a certain location around Florida or not, or close them down, or take their business overseas. They're paying attention. They decide on whether or not to build new housing, affordable housing in different cities around Florida. And then to locate office space, whether or not they're going to do things remotely or actually have physical people working in those locations. Okay, here's the goal. The very first time I saw this slide, I thought, what? You know, why are we not going for 100%? Well, it's not realistic, considering how we've done every 10 years in the past. So you look at Florida, 71% of the people completed the census in 2000. And then it kind of grew a little bit to 74% 10 years later. And now we're shooting for 82%. And then on the national level, 67 to 74 to 82%. And 82% is a big uptick. But I believe we can all surpass that goal because we have the capability to respond by the internet now and the phone. 10 questions will take less than 10 minutes. And the people who have problems in translation, let's say they speak Creole or Spanish or Portuguese, when they call that number, the representative that picks up the phone from the Census Bureau will have somebody that speaks their language. And even tonight, we've been really lucky in Palm Beach County. We have some volunteers that have helped us translate our materials into Creole and into Spanish. We have some of them here tonight. Or if you email me, I'll send you the digital copy so you can make copies or pass them out to your communities. As I mentioned earlier, there are 4 ways to respond. The letters are out today. It will give you a code, so you go online. It's a secure website that you answer the questions. And by the way, let's just say there's a farmer out there in a rural community, and he has 50 immigrants working on his farm. That farmer can start collecting all their information right now, all 10 questions, and that person can call and with that code, enter up to 99 people's data. So again, we want to make it easy and accountable. Same thing with the senior citizens home. A lot of lifestyle directors out there are gathering the residents' information already. The college campuses, the presidents of those campuses that have students that live on campus are doing the same thing. But again, by online, by phone, by mail, and in person. You notice there it says April 1st is National Census Day. So let's say there's a couple of you who are snowbirds. You're here today, but by April 1st, you plan to be in Massachusetts or some other place where it's a little bit cooler. Well, when you get that letter with that code, if you're in another state by April 1st, then legitimately you should do it there. But we would really, really love for you to do it now since you're in Florida, because we need the money, right? And we need extra seats. So, but that's why you see it titled April 1st is National Census Day. The timeline, March 12th through 17th, that's when those letters are coming out with the code to every residence. If no response, reminders will be sent. If no response, then the paper questionnaires will come out. Imagine that the Census Bureau right now probably has 100 million copies in storage, hoping and praying that they don't have to send those out. They really want to save money and save trees. And then if no response by May of 2020, a census worker will start knocking on the doors. Every door that they know of. And that includes a lot of gated communities. You know, I've spoken to maybe, 6 or 7 gated communities already, and they're thinking, well, can somebody really come through the security gate and come through and start knocking on doors? And yes, they can. They are federal employees. They will probably have some, some type of identification on them and a census t-shirt. But yes, they're gonna start knocking on doors. So we really don't wanna have to deal with that if we don't have to. Okay. If you log on to the Census Bureau's website or our League of Women Voter website that's on the cards that we gave you in the blue packet, you will see that these are the questions that they're asking you. Name, age, race. If you're really not sure what your race is, it's up to you to figure which one you want to list. Then your phone number. People are thinking, why do they want my phone number? Well, if for some reason you forgot to mark some information, or let's just say you have a college student who did it on a college campus, the university did it on his or her behalf, and then the family also double counted that student, the Census Bureau will call you and ask that question. Now have your guard up, because if you do get a phone call from somebody who claims they're with the Census Bureau, and they start asking questions like, what's your full social security number? Or what's your political affiliation? That's not the U.S. Census Bureau. Hang up the phone. They're gonna ask your sex, your date of birth. Why are they asking about Hispanic origin? Anybody take a guess? Why would that matter?
Trump wants to know.
No, it's not Trump. U.S. Congress. Actually, there's a lot of active organizations up in the Washington, D.C. area who they had worked with Congress to have that question on that census. Because there is a huge population. There are a lot of immigrants here. But they're not trying to target anyone. They just want a better sense of where they are and what kind of resources they may need.
So Hispanic origin, yes, no, or I'm from Mexico, I'm from Puerto Rico, I'm from the Dominican Republic, I'm from, which is it?
You saw it, right? You saw it.
I didn't pay attention.
We don't have the details on. Do you have the details on that one? I don't have the details on that one.
No, I don't have the details, but this is what we've been told to say in response, is you choose. If you think you're Hispanic, whether you're Mexican, Puerto Rican, whatever it might be, you get to say yes or no on that question.
It's a yes, no question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
Yes.
all self, what you decide you are.
Self-reporting, yeah. Good question. And then lastly, whether or not you own or rent. So, okay, I'm gonna get to the next slide. Notice that the official 2020 United States Census does not ask about your citizen status, and it doesn't ask whether or not you're an immigrant. So people who are anxious about that should recognize that we're not, the U.S. Census Bureau is not asking that question. Yes, sir.
And of course, it's important to know that the Census Bureau is not allowed to give out that information to anyone else.
Exactly. We're going to get to the confidentiality slide. Yep.
All right.
So what to expect? As I mentioned, the letter that you get in the mail, hopefully today, has a unique key code. You can do it on your phone, your iPad, your laptop. It'll take 10 minutes, if at most. You can ask for a paper form. You can call the Census Bureau and you can say, I really want something to fill out, hard copy, and you'll get it in the mail. You're going to get it anyway if you don't do it online or if you don't do it by phone. If no response by May 2020, the folks will start knocking on your door. Here we go. Privacy and confidentiality. The Bureau will never ask your full Social Security number. It will not ask for a money or a political contribution. It won't ask your PIN code or your password. And never sends requests on behalf of a political party. Now, this is common knowledge, but President Trump did direct the Republican National Committee to send out a congressional census survey. It got mailed out before this one did, and it looks very similar, even to the degree where it's got some blue shading on the form. If that would have been done next year, okay, but in my mind, my thought, it probably wasn't the best time to send it out before the 2020 census that we only do every 10 years. Your personal information is protected by federal law. If there is a census worker found to have shared your information, I believe it's 5 years in prison or a fine of $250,000. So it is confidential. When you log on online, it's a secure website. When you call the phone number, it's protected by somebody who's working as a governmental employee. These are some categories of people that are somewhat a challenge to count. Senior citizens who perhaps are not tech savvy or can't hear very well. Young children, a baby that's 1 year old, of course can't talk, can't go online, but that person gets counted. Renters, sometimes they're not always at home or they're too busy working. Immigrants, minorities, non-English speakers. The homeless populations, there will be U.S. Census Bureau workers out there on the streets visiting shelters. They will get counted. They don't physically have to have a residence to be counted. So. Oh, okay, I'll hit snowbirds. I'll talk about snowbirds again.
Could you mind calling us seasonal residents?
I know, I knew there was another term.
There is seasonal residents.
Seasonal residents, yes. So, I think I mentioned before that April 1st is the official census day. So, let's say you already know you're going to be out of town, and hopefully you're not going to be on a cruise ship because of coronavirus, but you're out there and you have the code. My first recommendation is, as soon as you get the code, do it, especially if you live in Florida because we really need the money here. But if you so choose to go out of town to another state, take your code with you and you can complete it then. But, so the snowbirds have the option to do either or, as long as they do it.
Well, I'm a legal resident of Massachusetts.
Okay.
Why would I register in Florida?
Well, your letter's probably going to go to Massachusetts then.
I've already returned my letter to Massachusetts.
Okay, so you got the letter today?
I got a letter from Florida today.
Okay, and are you going to answer it from Florida?
Why would I?
Well, it's up to you. That's what I mean. It's up to you.
It's not to me. I can't be a resident of two places.
It's not
That's what I want.
resident.
You
It's
can
not
pick it.
resident. It's we're speaking on April 1st. If you have a decision to make, that's the decision.
Yes.
Yes, Steve, it's not a declaration of residence, it's where can your personhood do the most good?
Oh,
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Very
It's,
good. I like that.
yes,
Good.
right.
Good.
I like that answer.
Your person has to be most good.
Okay, as I mentioned before, grandparents, parents, please encourage your neighbors, your kids, your college students. I have 3 grown boys, and I have to encourage them to vote and make sure they're registered and do the census too. So we really got to target those, everybody, regardless of age, needs to conduct the census. If you have perhaps a family where the children live with two different parents, have gone through a divorce or something of that nature, they just need to go ahead and make the decision on April 1st, whoever those children are residing with at that time, to go ahead and make sure that they're counted. And I mentioned at the end, newborn babies, even those born in the hospital on April 1st, we've got to count them. Okay, kind of talked about the seasonal residents here, counted where they live and sleep most of the time, or like this gentleman said, where the money may be most needed. Healthcare facilities, short-term patients, they would still reflect their answers based on where they typically normally live. If they're long-term patients, then the facility will count them and turn in their information. U.S. military personnel stationed overseas will be counted by their organization. With regard to the college students, if they're on a campus, they're full-time students living in a dorm, then those colleges or universities will count them. If they're living at home and driving back and forth to the university or the college, then they should fill the census out based on where they live. And if there are foreign students that are residing overseas, for example, University of Maryland has a European Division campus over in Germany, then that particular university will count the students that are there. But what we don't want is for a student to be counted twice. Yes, sir.
And it's in flux, right, so we don't know.
I have one, might seem like a peculiar question, but if you were to use the phone as your meeting, they don't use the area code of your caller ID, right? There's something else that allows you to associate with the state.
Yes.
Because, for example, I have a Connecticut phone line, but I live in Florida.
It's a geo code, that's what they're calling that, that signature, the letter on top of your letter. It's a
Oh, okay,
geo
so
code.
it's code
Code for Florida.
Got it.
Good question, yeah. The code on the letter.
I thought you were going to talk about the college kids
Yeah.
that are all going home. You know, I think we're just going to have to go with where you are sleeping on April 1st, because it's going to be really messy if all the schools are closed.
Yeah, good question. As I mentioned before, the homeless or people living in emergency shelters, hurricane victims, they will be counted by volunteers or Census Bureau personnel being out there getting their information. Displaced personnel, wherever they live or sleep most of the time. And prisoners, even those that are incarcerated, will be counted. Yes, sir.
That is actually a big business in upstate New York, because they have all the prisons up there, and they get a huge number of congressional seats because of all the jails there.
Aren't they felons?
What?
Aren't they felons?
Well, they were in jail, but they got counted up there.
Let's talk about New York.
New York.
Yeah, but you're talking about congressional districts.
Well, they apportion it based on population. So upstate New York, for the number of people who actually live there, get many more votes because of the way jails are a business up there.
Yeah. And that's not the only place. Okay. Okay, and in addition to the U.S. Census Bureau, there are hundreds of census complete count committees out there across the nation. And if you want to become more involved as a volunteer to help with that effort, you can go to our website listed up there, or you can go to the U.S. Census Bureau, or you can just Google the complete count committees. And based on, it'll give you states or zip codes or whatever if you want to get out there and help volunteer. We've had the privilege of having very, very, I want to say, energized people working for the Census Bureau. They were out recruiting hard to hire more people, especially college students. I think that's tapered off a little bit. I know in some of the rural communities, they still need some volunteers, so if anybody wants to go to Alaska, or out in the desert in California, I'm sure they'd love to find out who those people are.
North Dakota always needs people.
Yes, North Dakota. Okay, and as I mentioned, there are local leaders, organizations that are out there doing is what we're doing, getting the message out, how important it is. And like I said before, you could just Google that. Okay, so this is the last slide I have. Everyone counts. It's easy and it's important and it's safe. So I got through the slides. I welcome the floor to questions and answers. And then I'll turn to Kathy, if I missed anything, please let me know. Okay? Yes, sir.
One interesting census fact is while aggregates of the information are used, personal information is not released for 72 years. And this is very exciting for people doing ancestry stuff, because when the new the 70-year-old census is released, everyone dives for it to find out where your people were 72 years ago.
I'll be very old by then.
Well, I think originally it must have picked 72 because they figured that's, longer than a lifespan. So,
Yes.
in coronavirus, it may be true.
Yes, sir.
Is there any mechanism that prevents erroneously registering twice?
I don't believe there's a mechanism in place, like a firewall or a red flag that would go up. But the Census Bureau, the employees, spend many, many months analyzing that information. So I'm sure at some point they will find out, but I don't believe there's a mechanism in place beforehand.
You had no way of testing that either.
Yeah.
But
So you can't fake it. I mean, you can't just say, yeah, I have 2 other people living in the house in order to get another congressional seat.
right. Right. What I will say, coincidentally, in preparation for the elections, though, and in the supervisor of elections here in Palm Beach County, the FBI and other organizations are working to make sure if anyone tries to log in from a foreign IP address, that they will not be able to get through the firewall. So maybe that's a good idea for the census, right? Good question. I'm going to follow up on that. Yes, ma'am.
One thing that, from any visitables that I go to, they recommended that we volunteer in our time and go to these nursery schools and primary schools. And Cindy Boyd gave out bookmarks, and they gave me a whole bunch of bookmarks, and
I deleted them.
oh,
Yes, but our trunks are full with stuff.
the teachers at the school
Yeah.
loved it because they were going to put it in every kid's backpack.
Yeah.
when They left. So if you have any more, I'll be happy to do more of that.
Sandy. Good, thank you.
So you mentioned before that there are facilitators who can gather and enter information for up to 99 people. Are there special instruction packets for someone who would want to be a facilitator? So I'm thinking of like, let's say, we have 5 precincts here in Delray that are predominantly Haitian precincts.
Yes, yes,
And thinking about, say, training a block captain
yes.
to
So, I'm on the complete count committee for the city of Delray, and Janet Meeks got a $25,000,
Grant.
grant, thank you. And each of those, she hired, I think, 5 block captains, and they each have 5, and they're all getting paid to go knock on doors in those areas. And they have their youth, and they all speak the language, and they know the neighborhood.
And they're clearly identified as, because
They have a T-shirt on that says Thrive or something like that. They're local kids that are, Janet Meeks got the whole skinny on that
oh,
one.
okay, because we also have paid canvassers that are running around those same precincts right now for the city commission elections that are doing VBM facilitation, things like that. So I hope they're not, kind of stepping on each other's turf.
I think they're gonna wait a couple of days.
Okay.
You can check with Janet, though, you can call her tomorrow and find out, but I think they're not going for a couple of days, make sure everybody has it. Because you can't do it without the number, right? And the letters just started today.
Okay, that makes sense.
So you're probably gonna wait till after the election, if that would make sense, right? I mean, there's too many things going on.
Right, exactly.
But you did bring in, like, this is a formal presentation approved at the state level. Everything is nonpartisan. But if you want the training that's where we need to turn you over to the committees to sit down and explain it. The HACC, the Haitian American Collaborative, I forgot what the last C stands for, but we've met with them 3 times in the last week. Last Sunday, there was mayors, there was pastors, and it was just marvelous. So Del Rey really is doing a great job.
And supposedly, we are going to be able to see Fast and Furious in real time as they calculate it, so they can see where it's not happening, and they're gonna go out and go zoom into the neighborhoods, supposedly. I don't see how that happens, but, you know, it'd be
Yay!
good, right? So
So
they're,
you'll see heat maps that show.
this is what John says, that it's gonna happen, and they're all looking forward to it.
Coronavirus will be red and census doers will be green.
So, you know, they're really trying to get this done without too much labor knocking on doors. They really don't want to do that.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Yeah.
Any other questions out there? Okay. Well, I'm going to charge that each of you have a packet. Please share the information as ambassadors for us. If you have any questions, please call. And from the bottom of our hearts, we really, really appreciate what you're doing. And just thank you for having us here today.
Can I ask a question that's off topic?
Okay.
Off topic. This is not regarding the census, but I'm hoping to get some clarification on something. I heard somewhere along the way, and the best answer is no, this is not the case. I heard somewhere along the way that the league at the state level has endorsed a position against the use of vote-by-mail balloting. Please tell me that is not the case.
That is not the case.
Thank you.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Every time we have little cards, we're trying to get everybody to do it from home.
Beautiful. Okay.
No,
Great.
no.
I think that what happened there, Bob, the article you're referring to that was in the newsletter, someone forwarded it to me and then I forwarded it to you. What it said was that you need to be careful. You need to check that, you know, your ballot has been received. And I mean, there was some concern about that because it's a hard sell, I have to say. We've been canvassing in a Haitian neighborhood where there are a lot of hot voters. And these hot voters like to... You think I can't be heard?
What?
These hot voters like to go to the polls. And this is the first year, actually, I have been really pushing them for the vote by mail, whether they're hot voters or not. They don't have to use the VBM. They can still go to the polls. But we don't know what the polls are going to look like. And I mean, look at what's happening now with the primary. They're closing locations in senior citizen facilities, and it's nice to have that as backup. And who knows what's going to happen in November when people who are the wrong people, because they're the wrong color, are trying to vote. They are going to be out, I think. The Republicans are going to be out in November. If you mail it in, you have a much better chance of having your vote counted. So.
Has the governor extended the BBM deadline?
I don't know. I know he's been asked. Does anyone know that?
I haven't heard that.
No.
We're supposed to call.
I was going to mention, one of our other committees focuses strictly on voting, and already the Speaker's Bureau has received 38 requests to talk about the ballot initiatives for September and October already. So as soon as we get the information, we'll be out to talking about it. And the League puts out a phenomenal paper brochure that talks about all the ballot initiatives, whether you vote yes or no, who the candidates are, including the judges of both parties. Sir?
When will the eventual census report be available?
Published? I want to say late 2021. It takes a long time to do a lot of the analysis. Yeah.
I will
ask the question though and get back to you.
Are there any more questions, Karina? Okay, let's, as I said before, Takeshi Yamasaki is a producer with NKH, which is the Japanese equivalent of our PBS. And they're very interested in everyone's views on the election, who we're supporting. What I told him, and I'll repeat again, is the club can't endorse any candidate. We individually were supporting different candidates. Back in, I think it was September, we decided, I think we didn't have a speaker for that meeting, and we decided that the speaker is you. And we basically asked people to fill out ranked choices 1 through 4 for their favorite candidates and also most important issues. And it's interesting, Elizabeth Warren came in first. Pete Buttigieg came in second. Bernie Sanders came in third. I don't remember who came in fourth, but I was delighted that the #1 issue was climate change, because it is the #1 issue. In January, I wrote a piece for our Delray Democrat saying that this is an existential election, and then saying that, of course, we say that every 4 years. And it's true every time. It was true in 1980 when we elected a snake oil salesman and replaced the New Deal with the Raw Deal. And it was true in 2000 when we elected someone that the media thought they'd rather have a beer with than Al Gore. It's true in 2016. And, I voted for Barry Commoner in 1980, which was a pretty stupid vote, but I learned. And by 2000, I was arguing with one of my cousins who was supporting Ralph Nader. I voted for Al Gore in New York, even though I had a free vote, because I was so pissed at Ralph Nader. Even though he was the best candidate, head and shoulders above Gore in my estimation, but he wasn't going to win, and he helped give us George W. Bush and 9/11 and the war on terror and the whole rest of it. So this time around, I think after 2016, the party was pretty split. A lot of people in the Clinton campaign blamed Bernie Sanders and the millennials for not coming out. In my view, they were maybe reason number 15 out of 130 reasons that Hillary Clinton lost. And it never should have been so close. I think that the millennials, and I think a lot of Bernie supporters, and I was one of them, I worked for Hillary, but there were people that I talked to who were just absolutely adamant they were not going to vote for her, because she wasn't good enough. She wasn't perfect, Yeah, I know. Well, that's the thing. And this year, I said in the article, people are, this one's too old, this one's too young, this one's too progressive, this one's not progressive enough. What do people want? Children in cages? It's really a no-brainer. Unfortunately, a lot of Americans don't have brains. So, until the coronavirus arrived, and until, I have to say, that the Democratic leadership, which in my view, if I call them the brain trust, I'm being ironic. They got it right this time, I think. They coalesced behind, they got the candidates to drop out. Although it was kind of funny because those candidates got in because they were worried about Joe Biden, and then they got out because they were worried about Bernie Sanders. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think everyone I talk to believes vote blue no matter who. You know, I mean, and the millennials in 2018, the 18 to 30-year-olds, they voted 70. Their percentage was 79% higher than it had been in 2014, and the 30 to 44-year-olds, it was something like 36% higher, and then it went down after that. So I think that they learned. You know, I mean, it's you get Donald Trump, and they keep getting worse. You know, from Nixon to Reagan to Bush to Donald Trump. So anyway.
We want the down ticket. We don't just want.
Well, that's and that's the thing, and that's the other nice thing about the only thing that balances the tragedy of the coronavirus, because people are going to die and people are going to lose their homes and people, I mean, it's going to be bad, but you know, the Republican Party is the enemy of the human race. It's you know, that's what Ezra Pound, the great poet, once launched some anti-Semitic screed, and a British poet, Basil Bunting, said, when you say things like that, you are, you know, you come across as the enemy of mankind at large. And the Republican Party, they have the power to end the world. And
They're doing it.
Charlie?
I just want to say, people forget there are 50,000 human beings locked up in Trump concentration camps right now.
Yeah.
And it's gone off the news.
Yeah.
It has. That's just outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, but
Well, that's it.
Against humanity. He should be taken to the head and tried.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, he well, that's the other thing I was thinking about with no, it happens after every election. You know, Obama said we're going to look forward, not back. When you talk about The Hague, you know, Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney and George Bush, and he's the least culpable of those three, you know, belonged in the dock at The Hague. They should be locked up today for starting a war. They killed a lot more people than Donald Trump has killed so far. You know,
That we know of.
right. But anyway, I think the point is to get everyone's opinion. They want to interview people, so this is just like a brief introduction. I will say, I think I said already, I supported Bernie Sanders, but every single candidate was head and shoulders above Donald Trump. I mean, there's just no question. So.
Mike, if you can indulge me, I'd like to.
Give him a mic.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Mike. So, quick poll. How many of you folks saw the speech earlier today by Vice President Biden regarding the COVID-19 outbreak?
Yes. What time was that on?
1 o'clock it started. I'm sure that there's going to be reruns of it, sound bites on the news. I strongly encourage you to see it. And the reason for it is, bingo, the single most presidential delivery of useful information and organization and order and preparedness I have heard since the farewell address of President Barack Obama.
Yeah.
The mayor.
Bernie's good for
Today.
that either. Bernie's speech is good too.
I didn't
I
say
didn't
it.
say that.
But I would strongly encourage you to see it, and the best thing to take away from that is a feeling of hope.
Decency.
Decency, hope, a return to normalcy, honesty, and that we're on the road to healing.
Right, you know, I said.
We're on the road to healing this country.
Yeah, Biden gives us comfort from the chaos.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you said that about Biden. I didn't say anything about him, and he was not at the top of my list. But what Biden has, and we had Fred, now I'm having a senior moment. Yeah. We had him here speaking last year, and he described what happened after his daughter was butchered. And Joe Biden called him, and he spoke to him for half an hour, and then he saw him again. I mean, he is, whatever you think about his politics, if he's too conservative for it, he is a decent human being. Which is, of course, the complete antithesis of Donald Trump. But the other thing, if you think back to 2008, because it is so much like that now, when McCain was shooting his hothead idiot. I mean, I don't know how he got deified, other than the fact that the rest of the Republicans were so much worse, and the media is so credulous. But when he was doing that, Barack Obama, it was the same kind of thing. We had a crisis, and on the one side you had a Democrat with a cool head and an obvious intelligence, and Wall Street actually supported Obama because it was their money, And now I read recently that Biden's been getting money from Wall Street. I mean, when the market's down 28% over the last 4 months, people are scared.
The day after Super Tuesday, the market went up 1,000 points.
Yeah.
It's crashed worse. It's been crashing worse since then.
Yeah.
The day after Super Tuesday,
Because-
the market went up 1,000.
Yeah, because they saw Biden being the candidate.
He supported the first black president we ever had. He supported him, he worked with him, and a lot of the population can see that. There was no contrast there because he was white and had been around forever, and Obama had. He supported him his whole 8 years in office. And that's the decency, that's the education that I think comes with voting for him.
How can I get that shirt you're wearing?
Take it off, Michael.
No, just, it's on Amazon. It's like $18, and I got matching hats.
Oh, you did?
If you Google this, Amazon will probably be the first thing that comes up. So,
What about other?
how would you like to handle this? Do you want to just go around and we can have people say? I don't know how everyone feels about that. Well, there. Okay. Well, we have
next Tuesday. I'll just opinion how to get rid of my.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I already had my turn.
What are we talking about?
What is the question, I guess?
Who you're supporting in, I mean, it's almost a moot point now because, I mean, it is going to be, Biden, I think, is going to win handily in Florida and he's going to win the nomination, but, yeah.
I've already voted in Massachusetts, and Massachusetts went for Biden. But I wholeheartedly and from the beginning supported Joe Biden in this election because I believe that while there are three groups of people in the United States. There are the people on the right who will probably vote Republican, and there are people on the left who will probably vote Democrat, and there are people in the middle. And I believe Biden is going to attract the people in the middle as well as the people on the left.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm supporting Biden, because it is critically important for the future of the United States of America that we get rid of Donald Trump. He is destroying this nation.
Question.
Yeah, no, that's,
And the world.
yeah, and
I wonder, anybody here, Biden is not first choice for supporting him?
Well, I was supporting Lincoln Biden too for the same reasons, but I did say I would vote, whoever the nominee was, I would vote for him. Because the thing is to get rid of Trump, it's despicable, and, what more can one say? You gotta vote for the nominee, that's it, and it's gonna be Biden, obviously.
I, for one, will do whatever it takes.
Yeah. You gotta
yeah,
get rid
well,
of
I
Trump.
mean, we did in 2016. There were a lot of people who were, you know, Bernie supporters that went out and worked hard for Hillary, but they were older. You know, they had been through 2000, they'd been through 1980, and you know.
I've been through another.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, I mean, you're already seeing the results in Virginia. One of the reasons Biden had the big win that he did was because of the voters you were talking about.
Also
you know.
in Michigan,
And Michigan,
the
too.
Republican mayor of Sterling Heights voted for Biden. So that's a community, I'm from Michigan.
endorsed
That's a
Biden.
community that is strongly Trump. They went, Macomb County went for Trump in a big way. But the mayor who voted for Biden in this primary in Michigan, and that community pretty much went for Biden. And these were strong Trump voters, I know. Macomb County were Trump all the way.
It really, you know, I wrote a letter to the Times today, which they won't publish, I'm sure, but I said, you know, nothing concentrates the minds like impending doom, whether it's, you know, of the person or of their finances. And that's what's happening now. People are gonna die. Halliburton, by the way, I don't know if anyone saw this. When the market was down 8% the other day, Halliburton was down 35%. And
Well, that's
10% today, another thing. Oh, I know, yeah, that's how you get it. Yeah. In history? Oh, point, not percentage, in points, yeah.
Biggest percentage since 1987.
Right, 33 years ago. So the 401ks have been decimated in this country. Absolutely decimated.
What I wanted to say about, so what I wanted to say about the election in 2020 is very interesting. In 2008, I was supporting Biden. And of course, he ultimately did not win, and he became the vice presidential candidate, and was probably the best vice president we've ever had, as we see in the commercial. In 2016, I may have supported him. Of course, he did not run. And now in 2020, I was not supporting him. I've always liked him and respected him, but in 2020, he was the wrong choice. And the thing that I think is interesting about the 2020 primary is that the Democratic Party got it hopelessly wrong. And what we did was we went with brand recognition. We picked the three has-beens that have been on the stage for a long time, that everybody whose name they knew, and said, we got to go for one of these people. We didn't look at this tremendously talented field of over 20 immensely qualified, capable people who would have trounced Donald Trump. Forget what the silly poll said, because they hadn't had their brand recognition yet. We went for the same tired thing, and now that we lost all of those great candidates, we're down to Bernie versus Biden. Yeah, I'm 100% Joe Biden. There's no doubt about that in my mind. I would never vote for Bernie Sanders unless he wins this year. Then I would. There's no way. No doubt about it. So I'm 100% Joe Biden because I've always respected him. But this should not have been a race that came down to Biden, Bernie, and Warren. That is not what the Democratic Party has traditionally done. It's not how we've traditionally won. And these were not the right people. So I think we need to look at that. We need to look at how the party coalesced around these people and how they hijacked the infrastructure and that because of their name recognition and became the big three from the very early days when we had some tremendous people that didn't even make the debate stage.
So who was your preference?
Senator Bennett of Colorado should have been in the debates. Governor Bullock of Montana should have been in the debates. Senator Klobuchar did make the debate. She made a nice run. We've had, and there were many others, Secretary Castro. There's so many good people out there, some of whom made the debates, many of whom did not. And all I'm saying is they never got a chance. We never gave them a chance because of the way we did it. Now, that's all in the past, because right now it's about November. And in November, it's about beating Donald Trump no matter what it takes. So for me, that's going to be Joe Biden. And it does look like it's going to be that way no matter what. But, and I'm happy with that between the two, but I'm scared, because I'm not so sure what's going to happen on the campaign trail, and I think we could have done a much better job of assuring our future. Nevertheless, to answer the question, Joe Biden.
When you say what's gonna happen on the campaign trail, what do you mean?
The lady in white.
Age-wise, health-wise, cognitive-wise, between both of them, quite frankly.
You know, Doug.
That's why we need a woman and a younger person.
Yeah, well,
Because they can step in and provide, right?
Yo, come over
We need
here.
a smart
Would you give her this
woman.
mic,
We need a
right,
woman.
and let her say it?
We need a woman. We need a younger woman to step in case Biden can't fill the 4 years. And she'll be able to walk right in. And I think Kamala Harris is one. Yes. Stacey Abrams doesn't have enough cred yet.
Yeah.
She's brilliant, but no. Harris has California, the whole state, she has the law, she has all of it. She can step into that job and she's gonna do it.
One person,
It has to be a woman, I'm a woman.
one person that Rob did not
I
mention,
want a woman.
one person that he did not mention that is
Biden's
immensely
gonna pick a
talented
woman.
and would have blown
Yes, definitely.
Donald Trump right across the room.
And I
Is
also.
Sherrod Brown of Ohio. He was the best candidate. He didn't want to do it. No, he didn't want to do it, and we would have lost the Senate seat if we had done that, so.
You know, I have real problems with Biden. Historically, I have real problems. In the year that we were out in the streets trying to stop the war from Iraq from occurring, he not only voted for it, he was a cheerleader for it. He prevented his Senate committee from having anybody come to speak against the war, against marching in. And it's one of the biggest disasters of our era. And, you know, this is not going to stop me from voting for him. It's not going to stop me from working for him, working my butt off for him, because the options are limited. And
It's not on camera. You can.
right. So, you know, it's bittersweet, you know, that I'm voting for Biden. It's funny because last time I wanted Biden to come in. When it was Hillary and Sanders and it was looking like a disaster, and there was a point where Biden was thinking of coming in when Hillary was weakening, and he didn't. And I'm sorry, because at that point I was, you know, do it. But I was secretly happy that Hillary got the nomination because I thought she would win where Sanders might not. And that didn't work out. So, I mean, the last, you know, couple of years, we voted for a black guy twice for president. Who would have ever thought that? We voted for an idiot for president, and that's more believable. I don't know that Sanders wouldn't have won. He does very well with working class people. He starts from where they are. None of his they would rip him apart as being a socialist, except a lot of people aren't too worried about that anymore. A lot of people
Plus, I don't think he can get the down ticket.
but that's just it. You know, so we'll see. I think a lot of people who sat out the election last time aren't sitting out this time. And I think almost anyone could beat Trump. I'm probably wrong, but at this point, certainly now. Anyone else?
I think Obama saw something about Biden. Why did they pick Biden? Right. Tell me why Biden
speech that Bernie gave.
Why did Obama pick Biden?
The speech that Bernie gave regarding Joe, what are you gonna do? Joe, what are you gonna do? It seems as if to me he was preparing Joe Biden for the debate.
Right on.
He gave him the
That's right.
questions.
That's what he was doing.
And he's gonna have an awesome team, so I'm not worried about Joe.
That's right.
Yeah. But you know, another thing, what's his name? Tom Friedman, who I have a love-hate relationship with. But he had that interesting column about, you know, the team of rivals. And what they should do is announce who's the, and of course, he's really naive sometimes, because at that point it was, if Bernie Sanders is the candidate, then Mike Bloomberg should be Secretary of Treasury. And if Mike Bloomberg is the candidate, then Bernie should be the Secretary of Treasury, as if Bernie would have any interest in that. But some of the other, and to your point about younger candidates that were really, Pete, he mentioned for,
Intelligence.
No, it wasn't intelligence. It was an army, Homeland Security. It was Homeland Security. Elizabeth Warren for Health and Human Services, which again, I can't imagine she would do, although she put together the Consumer Protection Board, and she might be a real force there. You know, I forget who the others were, but I think that's something that Biden could be doing as you know, as he gets closer or coming out of the convention, saying, this is my team, this is what we're going to do. And then you look on the other side, well, we've got this grifter who steals sugar from restaurants, you know, Wilbur Mills, who's apparently stolen $125 million. Vanity Fair had an article saying that and was never sued, so I'm assuming that it was... What?
Bernie is not a Democrat.
To those people, and I recognize that there are some, who are not excited about Joe Biden, and I understand why you're not excited about Joe Biden. I want to offer the following analogy. If you're parched on a desert, and somebody offers you a glass of water, you don't hold out for a pina colada. Joe Biden is our glass of water, and we are parched on the Trump desert.
My first choice was either Bernie or Warren. I'm a far-left Democrat that believes the debt is total bullshit. That we can do all the things that we need to do, that whoever we choose, which will be Biden, choosing Biden, they will be carried to the left. They will be carried to the left by events. So I'm fine with Biden. He's a good guy. I'm very excited about working for him. And I think we've got a hell of a chance to win. I want to say one other thing. Everybody's talking about what should we do? You know, the economy's going downhill. Everybody's going to be put out of work. And they would probably never go along with this, but I think the Democrats, instead of doing all the other things, let's give $1,000 a month to every American, to every $500 to every kid, until the pandemic and the recession are both over. And if it's working real good, let's just keep on doing it. The only negative thing is
Mitch
Trump would
McConnell's
get...
never going to pass that. And we have to wait until November.
There would be a hell of a lot of pressure on him. He couldn't say, oh, abortion or whatever he's
Pressure
saying.
now, and they can't get anything through Congress to help anybody right now.
Let's give $1,000 to every American, $500 to everyone under 18. I guarantee that would be the greatest stimulus in the world. It wouldn't.
Yeah, of course, a stimulus, you know, the Obama's stimulus, okay?
Was great.
But what they did is the Congressional Budget Office issued reports quarterly on it. I didn't realize, if you were around at that time, course, in 2009, 2010, you're thinking, geez, this unemployment is 9%, you know, is it really work? And David Leonhardt in the Times said, you know, it's working, and he pointed to the CDC reports, and when I went and looked at them, it not only detailed, you know, the unemployment rate would have been 1.5%, 2% higher without the stimulus. Then they have a table that broke down the various programs in the stimulus. And one of them was, you know, extending unemployment insurance. Another one was giving money to the states to keep
aid to localities, teachers, firemen, everything.
Where people were hurting, and they spent the money. The tax cuts to the rich were the lowest job producer of all of them. And I mean,
you could burn half of it.
Yeah.
And the fire would create more stimulus.
And I'm telling you, the stock market crash is a leading indicator of the economy in 6 months. The unemployment, look to the unemployment to be outrageous by October.
Yeah.
It will be by October. That's an economic fundamental.
So, guys, I'd like to suggest a segue after speaking to Mr. Yamasaki. With the presumption, for now, better with the presumption right now that Joe Biden will be our candidate for president, who would you like to see as Joe's running mate?
Oh, boy.
We're talking about that.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
I want his whole cabinet. Let's look at his whole cabinet.
Well, let's start at the VP slot. We're not going to be into that.
I would like to see a person of color.
Me too.
And a woman. Fine, let me say. I would like to see a person of color, a black person, and a woman. Joe Biden should do that because of all the support. I think.
Well,
I think that he really has a pick. Yang, I think the Chavez,
Cory Booker.
That's right.
Cory Booker.
No, I don't.
Yeah, the woman.
Yang, the Chavez, Camilla, he's got a choice.
A lot of good candidates.
Yeah.
Give the mic to a woman, she doesn't say a woman.
Oh, I sure did. I said Camilla.
Yeah.
But you did say Camilla, yes.
I think the real good thing about all these presidential hopefuls is there's so much intelligence there and knowledge, and they're going to be getting places in the cabinet jobs. So all the work they did will not be for nothing.
You know, what they usually use the vice presidency for is to prop up a weakness of the candidate. To go for a state that otherwise he wouldn't get. They don't need a black person on the ticket. Biden's got that sewn up. A woman would help, but a woman from where? And that's part of the fun. Do you need someone from California? Not really. You might need someone from Minnesota.
Or Georgia.
I think,
Stacey Abrams is from
Women are
Georgia.
gonna come out. Older women, educated college women.
So Dave, what you're citing is absolutely what the conventional wisdom has been
Right.
for parents.
I'm conventional.
I think we're in a different situation this year.
Maybe.
And I think that the different situation involves the fact that Joe Biden is of an age that makes it more likely than with other candidates that he will have to be a one-term president. And if we go on the presumption that Joe will be a one-term president, then the question in voters' minds are going to be is, who's his apprentice? Who is he preparing to step up, not only backfill him when he needs that backfilling, not only presiding over the U.S. Senate and negotiating legislation, but who is preparing to take the mantle and walk into the Oval Office at the moment that she is called to do so.
Michelle Obama, not to be macabre, but it's occurred to me that if he selected Stacey Abrams, okay, and he didn't survive his term, okay?
God forbid.
And Stacey Abrams became president, those racists in Georgia would be saying, God damn it, we should have let her have the governorship. You know? I mean, now she's the president.
But so.
And Kamala Harris looks
That's
different.
right.
And Kamala Harris looks different. And she's got a big background. And Stacey is brilliant, probably more brilliant than but she doesn't have the credibility yet.
Well, she doesn't.
Warren is
That's
brilliant.
even a bigger trouble.
But you gotta look at the women, the black women.
Yeah.
They're
No, I
the ones
agree,
that came out
Kamala.
to vote.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you got it in that package.
We've got to look at who middle America would want. Because middle America is going to elect the next president.
And the women,
Not
and the
us on the left.
Right.
We're not going to elect the next president. We're activists. We care about the issues. Middle America is going to go to motions and they will not.
Black women are who did it in
Guys,
2016.
let's hear what future Commissioner Resnick has to say.
No, here's what I would think. Now, Senator Harris is very impressive. I don't think she's the right choice for the ticket. She's got a future to do a lot of great things. Stacey Abrams should be running for Senate in Georgia, where we need her desperately to do that. I don't know that she has the credibility to be on the ticket yet, but she's amazing and she has a future to do that. Here's what I saw, and I read something about this. I don't know where it came, but when Joe Biden was here recently, he met with Val Demings. Congresswoman Val Demings of Florida, who was one of the impeachment managers. And second to Adam Schiff, she was absolutely brilliant and incredibly impressive. And guess what they were talking about? They were talking about possibly her being on the ticket with them. And think about, Steve, great point about middle America. Val Demings, first of all, Florida is a critical state, and we need to win Florida.
Absolutely.
And she will help win Florida, and I think she plays in the middle of the country. Val Demings, Congresswoman Val
She's
Demings.
outstanding.
She's amazing, she's brilliant, I mean, you can
Just
say,
outstanding.
and she's proven herself in Congress. I think she's the one. That's who I think you should take.
Good one.
I mean, what do you?
You know, it's too bad that people at this club don't have opinions, you know?
Speak up, somebody. Afraid to speak up. Go.
To look back a bit at who Hillary chose, I think she assumed she would win.
Yeah.
And she wanted a vice president she would be very comfortable with, and Tim Kaine would have been. But in the end, if she had chosen an African-American running mate,
Yes.
I think turnout would have been different.
Yes.
I think she would have won.
Yes.
I agree.
I think this year, it's a little, there's similarities. Joe Biden, I saw a clip recently of Obama giving him the Medal of Freedom and the speech that Obama gives as he describes Biden. And think of it, he was the vice president. He knows this. He can do it. He will be a very strong candidate. And he may be tempted himself to say, well, I can pick anyone I want to be my vice president and not have to think so tactically. But I do believe being tactical would be smart. I think the African American community, as big-time supporters of the Democratic Party,
The base.
and the base, and fueling turnout and rocketing all over the turnout, it would be a statement for Biden to pick someone of color. I think Stacey Abrams is a very powerful candidate. She did a lot as in her position in Georgia to do what she's done
And she's
to
still
bring that
going
state along.
forward about the registration system and the voting system in this country.
So I think she would
People are
be,
cheated at the polls.
she would be a very powerful vice president. I think Booker. I think
Greg Palast.
in terms of the people who ran for president, as you were saying, there was a whole lot of people besides these top. They had a chance. It's interesting. Buttigieg took advantage of that chance, and there was a lot of appeal. He did break through. You cannot say nobody was listened to. Who the heck was he to come from where he did? Because of who he was and how he did it, he made it. Obama tells a similar story because he was able to break through. And I think that Kamala Harris and Booker just didn't quite have as much to break through as as Biden did, as Buttigieg did, to raise to those levels. I think to look at the different idea of Bernie running against Clinton now and being even, and Bernie running against Biden now and Biden running away. Well, look, that's because a man is more looked after than a woman. Well, I think that leaves out, Clinton had a lot of baggage. Clinton had stuff that a lot of people did not like. And it's not, I don't think it's a fair comparison to say, well, you know, it's because she's a woman compared to his being a male.
30 years of conspiracies.
There's a lot of history that I think did drag down, that makes that comparison wrong. Today, I did fill out my ballot, I voted for Elizabeth
Right
Warren.
now, that's in the media, is main responsibility for all the negative press that she got over those months. It was totally negative.
I voted for Warren because I think that element still needs to be lifted up. If Bernie and Biden were really neck and neck, I would totally vote for Biden. I did support Bernie in 2016, but I think he can. I would be very concerned about the coattails. I think Biden has much stronger coattails for bringing many more Senate candidates along, and that's what we need. So, but because I think it's a runaway, I want that sentiment represented. I think Elizabeth Warren is a very strong candidate, and I want him to know that there's others who deserve votes too.
Let me just follow up on Clinton and Biden. I think Biden has as much baggage as Clinton. I really, you know, Clinton was one of the most admired people in the country when she stepped down as Secretary of State. She had something like 67% approval rating. And then, you know, the right-wing disinformation, and then the media too. And I think that there was an element of sexism in that. But I thought that was really interesting what you said about who she picked and who Biden might pick. He was talking about, you know, he could see running with a Republican. Well, you know, that is something that worries me. You know, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think, you know, I mean, he will, but when he, and in fact, I'm working on an article about Joe Biden's Republican friends. You know, I don't have any Republican friends, you know, and I don't think anyone in government that calls themselves a Republican can call themselves a human being also. You know, I mean, you know, they are, Thomas Mann famously called the Nazis the dictatorship of the scum of the earth. And that's